In Washington, D.C., a lady goes to the neighborhood tram station while following an instant message saying she'll find the responses she looks for under crossing 1114. Anyway, when she shows up there, she doesn't find anything with the exception of her passing on the grounds that an approaching train kills her like a flash. In the meantime, in Thailand, American PC engineer Max is getting done with his last task nearby. A while later, he returns to the inn to prepare to get back, and he's shocked when he finds a bundle sitting tight for him with no source. Inside, he tracks down an extremely present-day telephone, however no pieces of information about how he should manage it. Max chooses to leave it until further notice and turns on the news, which is as yet examining the question of a disputable security financing charge that would approve the NSA to redesign its ongoing observation innovation around the world. At that point, a message from an obscure source shows up on the new telephone, let Max know that the lodging will have a reduced cost rate this end of the week in particular. At the point when Max checks with Gathering, he gets affirmation that the promotion is valid, so he chooses to remain 2 additional days. Simultaneously in Russia, a bear man likewise gets an instant message telling him another telephone has been identified. During the end of the week, Max unwinds and has a great time while as yet staying aware of the news, permitting him to get familiar with the bill hasn't passed due to 1 vote, yet NSA chief and Bill ally Burke won't remark on it. Watching the news likewise causes Max to learn of a stunning treat. The flight he had expected to return home on crashed soon after departure, and no one made do. Significance: Max is alive, thanks to the telephone message. Discussing the telephone, Max gets another message advising him to purchase portions of an organization named Scissor, however he chooses to overlook it. Some other time when he strolls by the Gathering, Max praises the workers on the lodging's savvy method for advertising their promotions, however they don't have a clue. At the point when Max gets back to his room, he attempts to call the telephone organization to attempt to figure out who sent the message, yet their framework says obscure source also. To make matters more secretive, the news shows that Scissor's portions are soaring, so Max has botched an enormous money management opportunity. The following morning, Max gets another instant message advising him to go to Prague in the Czech Republic, and this time he chooses to comply. When he shows up at the air terminal, a Russian cabbie named Yuri offers to drive him into town in his old vehicle. He's exceptionally pushy and Max is reluctant, however he winds up tolerating on the grounds that Yuri offers a level modest rate. During the excursion, Yuri's amazed to see Max's telephone, since that model isn't formally out yet, and takes the risk to give him his card, since working with devices is his temporary work. When he's at the lodging, Max calls the messenger organization, yet they aren't permitted to share data about shippers since it's an issue of security. At that point, he receives another message advising him to go to the club and play gaming machine 13, which will hit big stake in 4 additional twists. The machine is as of now taken, yet Max is so frantic not to pass up on another open door that he pays the ongoing player €100 to assume control over it. The man leaves. In this way Max will play straight away, and similarly as the text anticipated, he wins the big stake. Since the club has surveillance cameras all over, this entire trade is seen by the security group, and Pioneer John arranges his men to watch out for Max. Then, Max receives a message to go to Blackjack Table 6, and he trades his award for chips to wager everything as the message says, procuring him another success. John sees Max seeing his telephone while he plays, so he sends one of his safety officers to let Max know the telephones aren't permitted in the gambling club. Not able to surrender this open door right now, Max calls Yuri to check whether he can assist him with figuring out how to get to the messages without conveying the telephone with him. Yuri acknowledges to help, however it'll require a couple of hours, so Max gets back to the lodging where he finds a couple contending in the passageway. Camila appears to need to move away from an insane man, and Max comes with all due respect, which procures him a punch from the person that takes him out. When Max is oblivious, Camila uncovers it had all been a demonstration and clones his telephone's SIM card prior to awakening him. With the other person gone, Max takes the risk to play with Camila, and they consent to talk later. In the meantime, John's group finds there's no record of Max's messages in any framework, which ought not be imaginable. Back to Max, he meets with Yuri once more, who introduces a Bluetooth message to discourse transmitter on his telephone, permitting Max to go into the club with just an earpiece. Yuri's likewise dazzled by the unknown messages since they're concealing the source, and Max contemplates whether he can figure out who sent them, yet sadly, that requires a degree of hacking that Yuri can do in Moscow, where he has generally his high-level hardware and associations. Max gets back to the club and adhering to the guidelines in his ear, he figures out how to win once more. Seeing this on the surveillance cameras, John and his men pursuing him through the structure. At the point when he's going to make it outside, Max is obstructed by Specialist Dave from the FBI, who captures Max on the spot. John attempts to stop him, guaranteeing Max is their person, however Dave doesn't tune in and removes him, while reminding John he isn't a specialist any longer. Minutes after the fact, Max is taken to an unwanted distribution center, where Dave cross-examines him about the telephone by compromising him with his firearm. Max swears he is clueless and Dave trusts him, so he abandons him for some time. Subsequently, John shows up at a similar structure, having utilized his assets to find out where Dave is stowing away. Seeing as John won't leave without replies, Dave shares the data he has. They're researching individuals getting monetary tips by means of instant messages. Every one of the beneficiaries are American, yet in any case they appear to be irregular. The first was a chief at a significant credit authority, the second was a real estate agent, and the third one was the lady from the metro station, who ends up being a director at the branch of protection. As a matter of fact, one of the messages requested that she shut down the firewalls to the Pentagon's servers. The shipper is dependably untrackable, and the receipts can't be cross-examined in light of the fact that they all passed on in dubious conditions. They found Max ahead of time on account of the FBI working with Burke's high-level spying framework, which permitted them to catch the texts. John and Dave consent to cooperate, and Max joins too to try not to be shipped off prison. Dave will save the telephone for the evening, and Max mustn't leave the inn for his own security. The following day, John goes to see Mueller, the gambling club proprietor, who orders John to use however many assets as important to track down the individual behind those texts. In the meantime, Dave calls Burke, who consents to go live with his global positioning framework in 3 hours. At the lodging, Max is exhausted until he gets a call from Camila, and they get a beverage together at the inn bar while holding over private tales. Tragically, their little date is intruded on by John and Dave, who have come to get Max to begin an arrangement. They've separated the follow, and presently they need 3 directives for a lock, so Max should adhere to the guidelines as expected until it's finished. To accomplish this, John gifts Max an additional chips to kick him off. Max gets back to the club and wagers everything, except this time, he loses and gets a message making sense of this has been an admonition. In the event that he switches off the telephone once more, he'll be killed. This sounds like a calamity, however the messages are enough for Burke's men to follow the area of the source to Maryland, USA. Anyway, when Burke hears this, he arranges everybody to close all global positioning frameworks down right away and afterward calls Dave to cut short the mission on the grounds that the NSA's reconnaissance program known as ECHELON is by all accounts included. Dave follows the orders and illuminates Max and John that the purposes behind the end are arranged, however John can figure ECHELON is involved. At the NSA base camp, Burke's going off the deep end needing to realize who has hacked into ECHELON to send these messages, however the framework shows no unapproved access. In a little while, John illuminates Mueller that Dave left with the telephone and his hypothesis about ECHELON, so Mueller orders him to watch out for Max. Since he's as yet alive, this secretive association might get in touch with him once more. At night, Max visits Camila at her home, where they share their fantasies for the future and go through the night together. The next morning, while Max is diverted, Camila gets a call that reminds all her maximum occupied and inside the condo. Meanwhile, the telephone gets a message with a location, so Burke orders Dave to send a specialist claiming to be Max. Dave doesn't figure they can deceive the texter like this, and he ends up being correct. When the specialist arrives at his objective, he's killed in a fender bender brought about by somebody controlling the stoplights. Back to Max, he's keeping himself occupied by investigating ECHELON, which permits the NSA to catch each call and email residents send. The update that wasn't endorsed by Congress would have permitted them to place a camera in each individual's home as well. Needing to occupy him, Camila gets tender and notices Omaha, Max's old neighborhood, which he never filled her in about. Shattered, Max acknowledges Camila is working for somebody, however before they can examine things, Camila sees a rifleman on a rooftop across the road and pushes Max to the ground before he's shot. There likewise are hired fighters coming up the steps that Camila can see on her surveillance camera, so she conceals Max in the restroom while attempting to recuperate the weapon she's secret under the kitchen table. This permits the rifleman to see her and hurt her arm with a shot, making Camila choose to leave the weapon and wound the entryway with a discharge poker prior to stowing away. The cutting is fruitful, and one of the hired soldiers bites the dust, however the other still makes it inside and hears Max making commotion in the restroom. To save Max, Camila takes a chance with going through the loft while evading the expert marksman's fire and hops on the soldier of fortune to stir something up. With one speedy action, the hired soldier figures out how to overwhelm Camila, and Max assists her by cutting the man's leg with a brush. This allows Camila the opportunity to at long last kill the person, yet the expert sharpshooter escapes when he hears the police alarm drawing closer. Out of nowhere another person enters the restroom. It's John, who has been working with Camila from the beginning. Since the condo has been compromised, John removes Max with him while in the city. Dave recuperates the telephone and finds another message requesting that he get Max, or he'll be killed also. Max leaves with John in his vehicle, who illuminates him. You can't simply escape from the NSA, so they should disappear. Anyway, Max gets a thought. He needs to go to Moscow and see Yuri, who might have a method for breaking down his SIM card. John denies, figuring they can't confide in some irregular person, yet Max persuades him by calling attention to Russia has further developed frameworks than the USA, and they don't have elsewhere to go in any case. Luckily, John has the cloned SIM card data Camila procured, and he can inquire Mueller for safe going to Russia. When they come to Moscow, Burke's spying framework tells him of their area, and he sends Dave after them. John and Max visit Yuri, who swears he doesn't realize anything after John compromises him and vows to take care of business in 3 hours. Subsequently, John and Max take a stroll through the city, and Max will hear the reason why John left the FBI. He was against Burke's following strategies and blabbered. 3 hours some other time when they return to Yuri's place, they find no one got to ECHELON to send the messages. They were sent by ECHELON itself. Every one of the messages it sent had data from its ability to keep an eye on everything. It realized the flight would crash since it blocked the fuel examination. It realized about Scissors stocks, thanks to perusing the proprietor's messages with its investors, and everything in the gambling club it could figure, thanks to the quick way it could count cards and monitor the moves in the gambling machines. Their discussion is out of nowhere hindered by the appearance of the FBI, so John and Max go through the secondary passage and take a van from a neighbor to get away. This triggers a vehicle pursuit all through the city that closes when John and Max mess up and wind up cornered before a passing train. Luckily, John has a weapon, and when Dave leaves his vehicle, John shoots and makes the vehicle detonate. Dave gives the telephone back to Max and concedes they need him, since ECHELON will just converse with him. Not even Burke can contact him now. The NSA likewise realizes ECHELON is sending the messages. Consequently, after Max compromises him with his own firearm, Dave swears he's his ally and gets Max to consent to help. The following message incorporates the location of the principal PC work Max could possibly do, so the threesome flies to Omaha. Spot they're going to is a changed-over shelter purchased by a beginning up wanting to rent data transmission, and Max had consistently thought it was a peculiar structure to house servers in. The potential clients hadn't loved it either. The organization was sold at a closeout before it even opened. The spot hasn't been placed since the deal, and they can't view as the ongoing proprietor. When they show up, the FBI explodes the way to get close enough to the structure, which is vacant with the exception of the servers. Max receives a message requesting that he approve profiles, which would permit the servers to get outside information, so Max will work after Burke gives his okay. On account of Max's administrator secret key, they gain speedy admittance to the servers just to think that they are totally unfilled. The gathering leaves the structure thinking they've burned through their time. However, another specialist accompanies significant news. The proprietor of the structure was the real estate professional that passed on the grounds that he additionally received messages. His visa had likewise been the one to purchase Max's telephone. Getting dubious, Max returns into the structure and finds ECHELON is leaving its home PC and moving into these servers. This implies Burke doesn't have control over it any longer. It likewise makes sense of why Max was picked. ECHELON needed to move, and Max was the only one with a key. To leave the Pentagon, ECHELON had utilized the IT lady from the train to bring down the firewalls. Its arrangement is exceptionally straightforward. Since Congress didn't endorse the update, ECHELON has moved so it can overhaul itself. This building is only an impermanent home. Soon it will take home in each PC on the net. Dave orders Max to stop it, however he receives a message saying, "Don't attempt it," and that is when Max sees that ECHELON is showing him monetary records since it's kidnapped the whole populace's cash. This makes sense of the last dead casualty, who worked for the biggest credit information storeroom in the country. Exploding the office would make everybody lose their cash, so Max starts chipping away at attempting to get around the security safeguards to stop the overhaul easily. Dave calls Burke to refresh him on the circumstance, yet incidentally, Burke doesn't believe they should close Echelon down, since this is what he had for a long time needed, and presently he doesn't have to trust that Congress will alter their perspectives. He even has consent from the president. Dave and John will not follow these orders. Subsequently, Dave gets terminated, and Burke sends different specialists after them. While Dave and John give their all to safeguard themselves from the approaching assault with the couple of weapons they have, Max has a thought when he understands the PC has a camera and a mouthpiece, so he puts on the earpiece and figures out how to talk straightforwardly to Echelon. Max starts seeking clarification on some things, and Echelon makes sense of that its essential order is to safeguard the public safety of the US, which it characterizes as a country of residents with opportunities safeguarded by the Constitution. Any danger to that opportunity should be dispensed with, and that implies Max actually can follow through with something. He makes Echelon look for all internet-based articles that oppose the update bill. By realizing this data, Echelon reaches the decision it is a danger to American opportunity and closes itself down, not long before the FBI overwhelms Dave and John, and everybody gets captured. In a little while, Burke is giving unfortunate clarifications to the president and getting a sense of ownership with the wreck. This likewise implies he'll need to show up before the Senate Knowledge Oversight Council, which will probably have his head. Mueller celebrates when he hears the issue has been tackled, and Max is before long delivery from jail thanks to Camila, who has paid everybody's bail. No one will be squeezing charges, since they don't maintain that people in general should find out about what occurred. With Burke in a difficult situation, John considers Dave's proposal to return to the FBI, while Max reunites with Camila, who makes sense of Mueller sent the cash for the bail and has likewise sent a weighty check for Max as much obliged. Concluding he wants an excursion, Max welcomes Camila to France, since that was her fantasy. At that point, Max receives a message from Yuri, who compliments him on nicely done. Talking in Yuri, he's still in Moscow, however things are changing for him. Subsequent to shaving and changing his hair to look neater, he puts his commander uniform back on the grounds that he's been important for the Russian Security Administration from the beginning. The intense man from the start is his chief, who praises him for his activities and brings up they've assisted the Americans with settling on the ideal choice.